Okay, this is Sonava Sports, and today we're going to talk about NFC East teams. I did a full video about the AFC, but it was a 30-minute long video, and I think I should break it down a little bit shorter and try to get into more in-depth analysis over each team and try to do the best I can to talk about each team instead of rushing through it. So today, let's talk about the NFC East and what I think is going to happen, my predictions for next year, and what I think their records will be, especially what the standings will be, really. The Dallas Cowboys are going into one of the most difficult years for the fan base and for the team in a very long time. Not because of the talent, not because the roster is not as good as the rest of the league, but because the team has issues with Dak Prescott's contract, CeeDee Lamb's contract, Zach Martin is a free agent next year, DeMarcus Lawrence is a free agent next year, and if all of them leave, Dallas will be in the worst cap situation possibly in all of football. The situation in Dallas is starting to become a nightmare for fans because Dak Prescott might not be on that team next year, and he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, despite what the playoffs will tell you. CeeDee Lamb has emerged as one of the best, if not the best receiver in the NFL, and they have not paid him yet. And this morning, there's reports out of Dallas that he will request a trade if they give him anything less than being the second highest paid receiver in all of football. He's not asking for Jay Jettis' contract. He's asking for $32 million a year. That's all he wants. And that sounds like, oh, well, that's all he wants, $32 million. This is a receiver that has dominated since his rookie year. He's been incredible. Across the board, he's been incredible. And if Dallas doesn't pay him, someone else will, and it'll probably be more money. The issue is that Dallas was not prepared for this moment, specifically Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones plays around with this roster way too much and has acted like he has the upper hand in this scenario, but he hasn't. He hasn't for 30 years. And everyone knows it. That's why everyone makes jokes about the Cowboys. That's why everyone every year gets real excited when Dallas gets hyped because they know Dallas does not have the team to go further than that. Whether that's coaching, which recently and for the last, I'll say 15 years, it's been coaching, or the roster's just not good enough in some areas, which is another factor for the last year. So let's talk about this year. Dallas's defense probably statistically will not be the same team. Statistically, this team has Mike Zimmer as the defensive coordinator now, and that changes things because Mike Zimmer is better against Shanahan defenses than Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn is horrible against Shanahan offenses, I should say. Dan Quinn is horrible against Shanahan offenses, and he's now with the Commanders. So, I think Mike Zimmer will improve in that area. Mike Zimmer, though, has shown, with some talent, he still struggles a little bit defensively. Jerry will only go with old guys as coaches, and it sucks. It sucks for a Dallas team that desperately needs youth in the coaching department, and whenever they get youth, those positions thrive, whether that's O-line coaching, defensive back coaching, all of it. It has worked. But they went with Mike McCarthy in a final year of a coaching deal where everyone was shocked when Dallas announced they are going to keep him on board. It shocked everyone. Even the top analysts that were not like reactionary, they were shocked. So Dallas decided to keep their guys and go with one last year with everyone on one-year deals. And if they don't win, this team will be horrible in the future. Jerry Jones is not prepared for this moment. And if he doesn't step up and sign these guys, this team, even if they make the playoffs, which I think they will, isn't going anywhere. Talking about the team in the season, I'll probably do a Dallas Cowboys video later on. I'm talking way too much about their outlook. Let's talk about the team. The team in general. Dak Prescott, I expect the offense to perform the same. Statistically, I said the defense is going to be a little worse than last year. I think this team will do this about the same as before, 11-6, 12-5, simply because they're in the middle of the pack schedule. They do have a first-place schedule, so they're going to face some tough opponents this year. That's not going to change. But I think this team is still going to somehow pull it off because this team under Mike McCarthy has been 12-5 three times. I think they'll do it again. Either that or 11-6. Dak Prescott has shown last year that he has worked in this offense pretty well. The other issue is last year the running game was an issue. This year the running game is going to be even worse with their only addition really is Ezekiel Elliott. Let's move on to the Eagles. I put Philly second to be petty. I am a Cowboys fan after all. But for Philly, they're going to be 13-3 or 14-2. They're going to win the NFC East. It's just how it works. The NFC East is cursed. But Philly's really, really talented across the board. They had issues in the running game. Actually, they really didn't last year. They just had issues in play calling. Brian Johnson's no longer the play caller. Kellen Moore is. Kellen Moore has had issues in terms of actually performing, and especially against bigger team or better teams. But the thing is, he is very good statistically. Very, very good. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun for Jalen Hurts to be in this offense with Kellen Moore. And Saquon Barkley's going to be there. Even though he has injury issues, there is some depth behind him for the Eagles. The receiving core, it's better. It just is. This is a good receiving core. The O-line remains a little bit... Actually, the O-line's taking a bit of a hit with Jason Kelce retiring. Outside of that, though, this O-line's still really good. Defensively, this team is completely different than last year. Vic Fangio is one of the best defensive play callers in the NFL, despite what people think of him as a person. He's still a really good defensive play caller, and he proved that in Miami last year when they were losing bodies left and right. This team added a few pieces here and there. They added Gardner Johnson back. They added corners in the draft. There is no doubt this team is going to be 10 times, not 10 times, but way better this year defensively. Last year defensively, after that, November point, they started taking a hit, and they ended up falling to like 28th defensively in the NFL. That won't happen again. That will never happen again in the Howie Roseman era. It just won't. Defensively, this team is really, really, really talented across the board, and they got some pretty underrated linebackers as well. I don't think that there will be a question about how good Philly will be next year because this team did so much in the offseason to get better. They didn't waste any opportunities. They had around $45 million in cap. It's been around 4 months now since we've looked at the cap numbers for Philly, but that's what I remember around that number, and they used every dime of it to ensure last year doesn't happen again. Going to get pieces at safety, going to go fix their linebackers, helping up their defensive line with Bryce Huff. No question about it, this team will win the NFC East next year. Okay, moving on to the Giants. I don't think the Giants are a bad team whatsoever. I just don't think they have enough talent to get through the NFC East next year. And honestly, they're not a playoff team yet. They just aren't. Daniel Jones is still the quarterback. I'm not going to say that. He's going to take him to the promised land. Defensively, though, let's talk about the defense real quick. I really like this team's defense. Moving off of their coaching staff from last year and going to go get the guy from Tennessee, I really liked it because it allows them to not blitz as much because their guys just didn't like it in the scheme. Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Bobby Okereke, and Kayvon developing more. I really, really, really like that for them. It's cool to see. I expect a little bit more from their secondary next year. Jason Pinnock, Tyler Newpin, that was a really good pick, especially because you couldn't afford to keep Xavier McKinney, and you used the money to go get Brian Burns. You valued defensive line over secondary, or the safety spot, I should say. Edge rusher over safety, that's fine. Looking offensively now, okay, obviously there's issues. Daniel Jones is... I'm just never going to believe in Daniel Jones like that. It's year 6. I know Giants fans don't believe in him either. But Devin Singletary had a really good year last year. You just drafted Malik Neighbors. Jalen Hyatt looked really good in his rookie year. Darius Slayton's a good receiver. And Wan'Dale Robinson still has some potential in him. Isaiah McKenzie's good. Allen Robinson II still has some legs on him. Their tight end room is a little weak. Theo Johnson was a very good pick at tight end, though. Looking at their offensive line across the board, they got a better offensive line coach, so I hope he can fix John Michael Schmitz's issues from his rookie year. John Runyon was a good signing at right guard. Evan Neal, I don't need to say anything. I don't need to say anything. Giants fans across the NFL know about Evan Neal. Enough said. This team will probably end the year at around... They have one of the worst schedules in all of football. It's hard. My Giants fan friend told me he expects 4 wins next year, and that would satisfy him just because of how ugly it looks. But I'm not going to say 4 wins. I'm the person that does this. So I'm going to say the Giants go 6-11 next year. All right. The Commanders last. I'll talk about the record at the end as usual. Let's talk about the offense. They just drafted Jaden Daniels. And yes, Jaden Daniels is... People have some issues with him. People like him a lot. I think he's an incredible runner. I think he has a lot of arm talent. The issue is he doesn't really combine them. He doesn't throw on the run whatsoever. And that's my problem with him. That was my problem with him as a prospect. So I think he'll have some hiccups as a rookie. Cliff Kingsbury, though, I think that's a match made in heaven. And I think that if there are moments where Jaden Daniels looks way better for a rookie than people thought, I think Cliff Kingsbury will do that for him. I don't love Cliff. Don't get me wrong. I think Cliff is not a very good play caller. I didn't think he was a good coach. But I think this is a good fit. I really do. Austin Eckler being more of a receiving back gives him a safety blanket there. Brian Robinson Jr. also, I think he has some legs in him to be a good running back in the NFL. Okay, looking at Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Luke McCaffrey being more of their slot guy or maybe an outside receiver. I like that group. Jamison Crowder being a backup there too. This is a receiving core that is building up, and if they end up getting Brandon Ayuk, I think this team will be above the Giants, and I think this team could be, I don't know about playoffs, because this team does have a relatively weird schedule, but I think this team could be a lot better than what people are giving them credit for. Looking at their O-line, there's still going to be issues, and with Jaden Daniels, those issues are going to be more apparent. Sam Cosmi is really good. Biotish is a decent spot center. Like, he's going to be your guy for a year before you get a center that you really like. Dallas held on to too long because Dallas has their, weird roster issues and liking their guys they draft. Andrew Wiley and Brandon Coleman. I like the Brandon Coleman draft pick. I really do. A lot of people like the draft pick. I've only seen a few negative reactions just because how he was a senior year when he was hurt. But he's a rookie left tackle. We know how rookie left tackles work out. I'm going to move on to the defense, though. It's filled with veterans, and that's sort of what this team needs. They have a lot of draft picks from this last year. Looking at Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne will get replaced by Johnny Newton at some point. Johnny Newton was one of my favorite draft picks or favorite prospects in this entire draft class, and the only reason he fell is because he had a foot injury. Outside of that, I love Johnny Newton. He's going to take Daron Payne's spot, and Daron Payne is probably going to get traded at some point. Dante Fowler Jr. and Dorrance Armstrong, two guys from the Cowboys that will probably just be veteran edge rushers before this team tanks and tries to go get some help on defense next year. Looking at Clinton Farrell, that's a good backup edge rusher. He wasn't very good in San Francisco, so that's why they were forced to go get Chase Young. But still, he would be good in a rotation. Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, those are good guys to have in a rotation, especially Wagner. I mean, he's not that good anymore, but having them in a locker room in terms of veteran and leadership, I mean, who can be better than him? He's a Super Bowl champion. Frankie Louvu will be a good linebacker. I think he still has some talent to him. Jamin Davis, I know I've seen some, people not really like his game, but I think Dan Quinn makes him look a little better than people think. Okay, Jeremy Chin, Derek Forrest. The safety room and Dan Quinn's defenses always are good run defenders. In terms of passing, I don't think this passing defense is going to look that great. They don't have the edge rushers that that could really do help with that. In the secondary, like I just said, I don't know. I mean, Emmanuel Forbes, we had a lot of issues in his rookie year. And, rookie corners always have issues. But the issues he had, people are already writing him off as a bust. I'm not going to do that, but I'm still going to say I think you'll have some issues this year. This team is not meant for any playoff push this year. I think if you get Brandon Ayuk, this team is better than most people think, but they don't have Brandon Ayuk yet. And so I'm going to say right now, my prediction would be 5-12. I really just don't think this team can pull out that much wins next year. But looking at their schedule, I mean, they're going to face some pretty difficult opponents. A Baltimore game, a Cleveland game, because the NFC East and the AFC North do play this year. They play Dallas twice, Philly twice. Those are two really difficult opponents in their division. New Orleans, Atlanta, those are teams that could probably beat them. But looking at their roster, there's still a lot to look forward to in the future. Okay, so yeah. I think the Eagles get number 1, Dallas 2, New York 3, Washington 4. I will probably put out in my last video of the NFC my full standings for the NFC. But looking at it across the board, I think I'm probably going to say Philly gets the 3rd seed in the NFC, maybe the 2nd seed. It's really hard to look at it. I know I said they'd go 13-3. Who would do better than 13-3? 49ers and Lions. I think the 49ers do take a little bit of a backseat next year and go get the 3rd or 4th seed, and then that's where the Eagles can come in. The Eagles are still really freaking good. It's just I have a lot of high hopes for the Lions next year, and I think they have a little bit of an easier schedule. Looking at it across the board, Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, Commanders. Simple as that. I think a dark horse team for the playoffs could be the Giants if Daniel Jones is less turnover heavy and Malik Neighbors gives him a wide receiver option that he can at least show off more of his arm and extend plays. Daniel Jones has very good legs. Daniel Jones is somewhat smart when put in the right system. He's a smart passer. I'm not going to criticize his intelligence as a human being. But he's still limited as a passer. His arm is still limited. And the one year they did make the playoffs and did look good, I would say Daniel Jones did not. It wasn't Daniel Jones' arm ability that really got them there. Looking at the Cowboys, I'm a Cowboys fan, but this team deserves criticism across all fronts. This team deserves to have a lot of people pissed off at it. This team deserves to not make the playoffs, and I want them to, but they don't deserve it. The players do. The players really do deserve it. But I don't know about Mike McCarthy. And Jerry and Stephen Jones don't deserve to own an NFL team in general. They don't deserve to be even touching the NFL for the rest of their lives. They don't deserve to be touching a football for the rest of their lives. That is how done I am with the Cowboys. Or Jerry and Stephen Jones. As for the Cowboys, I still think they make the playoffs. They'll probably make around a 7th or 6th seed. Their schedule's weird, and I think there's a lot of teams in the NFC next year that make some jumps in terms of the Packers. Even the Rams I'm high on next year. Falcons, Bucks still are a team that's in that circle. The Saints almost made a push last year. The Lions, even the Bears have a chance to make a good run this year. And then the NFC West with the Seahawks, and I know, but Mike McDonald I'm really hyped about. Then the Rams and the 49ers. I already mentioned the Rams and the 49ers. But yeah, that's my NFC East. This is Sonava Sports. I'll catch y'all next time.